Welcome back, Officers of the Public. It's your Coruscant Underworld Police Chief APGAINS back with an updated is the optimal word here because Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes is always changing. I'm always a couple steps ahead so that you guys can be a couple steps ahead. The goal of the farming guide is to kind of circumnavigate the two main issues that lots of players have with this game. It's expensive and it's time consuming. So I just want to make sure that I help you guys kind of avoid spending tons of money because this is going to be a free-to-play guide, and avoid wasting lots of your time because there are some things that you guys can do in this game that will waste your time. That being said, let's hop in. Thank you for the a little bit less than 150 people who participated in kind of like our study kind of situation that we had where they followed the APGAINS approved farming guide starting 18 months ago. And I think they went like a 94.7% win percentage. So good job, guys. You did pretty well. If any of you guys want to be in the new updated study that we're going to start now, because the old one, 18 months ago, lots changed. Make sure you guys join the Discord, and I'll set it up over there so you guys can participate in the next study, because we use math to make sure that you guys can win with as little trouble as possible. Now, for those of you guys who don't know the general format of the farming guide, we have a 10-phase system where we show you basically the order in which to farm characters. Don't pay attention to the relics of the characters or the gears of the characters. Just think about the characters as their sole entities, and we'll have a video maybe in a couple days explaining which characters you should relic first, which characters you should gear to what level, what ships you guys should be working towards, and all of that kind of secondary and tertiary stuff that kind of adds on to the main farming guide. So, of course, as you guys know, Phase 0 has to be Darth Vader. He's going to be our first Zeta with his Merciless Massacre ability. He's going to be our first Relic. He is going to be the cornerstone of greatness in Grand Arena. Even if you choose to follow some other farming guide, please don't make the mistake of not having him be your first Zeta and your first Relic. I beg you. You can do whatever you want, right? I can't hold your feet to the fire to help you win more. If you want to have fun or do something else, just please promise me, and promise yourself, more importantly, that you'll get Vader as your first Zeta and your first Relic. All right. So Phase 1 is where it starts to get interesting. We're going to work on 2 characters for our CLS unlock requirements. That's Old Ben Kenobi and Farm Boy Luke Skywalker. They're both super easy to get. You shouldn't have any trouble getting up to 7 stars super fast. And then we have Ahsoka, Anakin, and Dark Trooper. Ahsoka and Anakin are going to be under our Padme team, which we'll get fairly early. Dark Trooper, since he is accelerated right now, is going to be kind of on a somewhat weaker Imperial Trooper team that we're going to use kind of towards the early mid-game, to give us some more flexibility on offense to make sure that we can, dominate our opponents, get max banners. Now, here's where the update comes in. Phase 1, we swapped out 3 of the Geonosians. We swapped out Soldier, Poggle, and Spy. We're still going to need to farm them at some point, but we subbed them in for a Kylo Ren First Order Super Special Forces TIE Bomber Pilot Echelon. I'm just kidding. First Order Special Forces TIE Pilot. And the new and improved First Order TIE Pilot who just received a massive Omicron. Now, the great thing about the First Order TIE Pilot and the First Order Special Forces TIE Pilot is we can farm them and their ships entirely passively. We don't need to use any energy, no cantina, no regular, no fleet. We can farm them passively in shipments, which is why we want to get on them now, because we're not really going to use them at all, right? We're not really going to be using a First Order team till probably a year later when we're in the mid-game and we're already, dominating our opponents. We just kind of want to build on to the lead that we have over other players. So since they are going to be passive farms, I'm going to put them in early just so that we can get into the habit of slowly farming up their ships and farming up their shards in shipments. And then Kylo Ren is going to be our pilot and leader for that First Order team once we do finally assemble it around the mid-game, maybe 6 months to a year after we've started playing. One thing you guys are going to note during this farming guide is a lot of times you'll have way more good teams than you'll actually be able to use in Grand Arena. Don't worry, this is on purpose because you'll be winning most of your Grand Arenas, which means you'll be climbing in the ranks in GAC. As you climb, you need more and more teams and eventually more and more fleets. So we want to make sure that we are prepared and, we expect to win, right? The whole point of this farming guide is we use the math. We expect to win. We know we're going to win. So we're going to prepare long in the future. So when that day comes, we're ready for it. Lots of people complain when the nerfs happen, when the ships updates happen, when all these changes happen. And fortunately, we foresee those problems or those changes. They're not necessarily problems out into the future, and we prepare for them now. So I just want to get you guys used to the general APGAINS approved farming guide mentality of we prepare to dominate now and dominate infinitely into the future, so that no matter what Capital Games does to change the game, we're ahead of them. We don't have to pay money. We don't got to waste our time. All we care about is winning, and we're going to keep winning. Phase 3. Now, this is an important phase because Basilishan is here. Once we open the Basilishan node, we want to farm Basilishan ASAP gains. That's as soon as possible. Even at 2 stars, her leadership ability is going to help us with so many things. At this point, we're probably, level 40, level 50, and a lot of you guys are probably going to be struggling with Galactic War, for instance, or completing Conquest or light side battles. And Basilishan is going to be massive for that. Because her protection up regenerates during Galactic War, you'll have no problem maxing out your Galactic War every time. It's going to give you 600,000 credits a day, plus 1,200 of the Galactic War currency, which we're going to use to buy lots of characters. We're also going to start slowly farming up General Veers and Admiral Piet. These are kind of background characters. They're useful more in the mid-game, but we just want to kind of get them up because they're going to go with our late early game, early mid-game Imperial Trooper team, and then Boba Fett is an easy farm, and we kind of just need him because he's going to be used for the Chewbacca event as a bounty hunter. Now, Phase 3 starts to get interesting. We get 2 more of our CLS unlock requirements. We're probably level 60, level 70 at this point. We're going to start working on Qui-Gon Jinn, also kind of passively because we farm him up pretty passively there. And then Yoda, once we have our 5-star Jedi, we can unlock Yoda. Sam Wessel, we're also going to farm up passively. A lot of these characters that you'll notice, like, if you're level 60, you're not going to have all these characters 7-starred. What's really important to know is just the general order to work on characters, because you could be, kind of falling behind because you're not doing your 50 energy refreshes and your 25 crystal refreshes on important characters, and you could fall behind. And it's okay if you fall behind, right? As long as you stick to the plan. If you fall behind and you feel like you're not where you are, trust the process. Get some of the characters up. The passive farms, just keep working on passively. The important characters that I'll point out in each phase, like, Anakin, Ahsoka, these guys, Darth Vader. Down here, it's going to be stuff like Newt Gunray is going to be the important one. Basilishan is going to be the important one here. Stormtrooper Han and Princess Leia are going to be the important ones in Phase 3. Just stick to your guns. Make sure the important characters are 7-starred. Work on the passive characters, obviously passively, and just kind of hang out and have some fun. Now, we get into Phase 4. We're going to get Jango. We want to get Jango. We want to pound Jango hard. That's what she said, of course. But the Jango node is the best node in the game. You're going to get a Jango, which is going to help you solo the Padme event. But also, you're going to get the Houndstooth, which is the best ship in the game. It's going to be hard carrying you in fleets for a very long time. And by a very long time, I mean literally forever, right? We're going to want to hit that node pretty hard. And then we're going to want to get the Geonosian Brood Alpha. I think you unlock that at level 83, level 84. We want to get him to 4 stars to go along with the other Geonosians that we've kind of gathered along the way. They don't need to be 7 stars. They definitely don't need to be high gear. He's got a good Zeta if you want, but it's not exactly a great team anymore. Not super useful, but it is nice to have because there are a lot of... I'm going to be honest with you guys. Now, don't take offense here. Just by watching this video, you guys, assuming you guys are new players, right? Just by watching this video, you're going to be more informed than probably 80% of the people who play this game, right? There's a lot of really bad players out there with really bad accounts, and sometimes having teams like Geonosians, which, isn't a great team, not a team you should invest in much, it can pay dividends when you face those bad players. Now, of course, if you identify your opponent in GAC as a good player, you kind of don't want to lean too hard on something that's not super great. But there are going to be a lot of situations where you find players who aren't the best, and you can take advantage of them with teams like Geonosians that they can't really find their way around, right? So Geonosian Brood Alpha to 4 stars is going to be kind of important. Jango to 7 stars is going to be massively important. You want to gear him up to like gear 10, gear 11 if you can. Bosk, also an amazing character. You're going to want his leadership ability for the early game to help you get you max banners and undersized max banners so you guys can win your Grand Arenas. Grief Karga, Mandalorian. Kind of passively farm those guys up to 5 stars just so we can work on our Chewbacca. Now, we're also going to, it's not listed here, but we want to get a 7-star level 1 Garazeb Aurelios out of the Galactic War store so that we have 5 7-star Rebels. 5 7-star Rebels gets us a 7-star Emperor Palpatine. Emperor Palpatine with the rest of the Empire characters that we have farmed gives us 5 7-star Empire characters, which gives us a 7-star R2-D2, which gives us CLS. Boom. Usually we want to try to have CLS pre-level 85. If you get him a little bit after, that's no big deal. You're not too far behind. I wouldn't worry too much about it. But CLS is going to be our first super team, and we're going to kind of rely on him for probably the next year to 18 months. He's pretty amazing. Take him on offense. You undersize, get max banners. That's kind of a theme here if you guys have we undersize, we get max banners, we make it pretty much mathematically impossible for our opponents to beat us, and that's how we can have win percentages of 95 plus. In some cases, we had, I think a couple dozen players in the pool went like basically perfect. We're talking like 150, 144 and 0. These kind of teams, like the CLS with the Han Solo, the Chewbacca, like the Bosk Zeta lead, like the Darth Vader solo, are going to be massively important because a lot of times for less knowledgeable and less skilled opponents, it's going to be harder for them to replicate the undersized max banners, which is going to mean that whatever we put on defense is going to strip away a couple banners, and then they're pretty much mathematically eliminated from beating us, which is why we can boast such powerful win percentages, because we're playing to a mechanic that our opponents either don't know about or can't properly utilize because they haven't planned so diligently like we have. This took years to put together, and it works for a reason, because most players can't replicate it, most players can't mathematically compete with it, and most players just will have no idea what hit them when they're seeing the kind of points that you can throw down on the board. Han Solo, very important. You want to join a Discord, you can join my Discord, you can join SWGOH events, you can find another YouTuber you like, join their Discord. Try to get into a good guild. A good guild for any level player looks like minimum of they at least attempt Dark Side Geonosis territory battles. So you want to have at least a 5-star Han Solo from the tank raid by the time, maybe a little bit after you get CLS, so that you can take advantage of having Han Solo on the CLS with Chewbacca. Padme Amidala. We have our Newt Gunray and our Jango, those two characters. Solo the Padme event, we get a Padme. Our Padme is used with our Anakin and our Ahsoka, and maybe some other Galactic Republic characters that we'll talk about a little bit later. And they're a fantastic team to put on defense because they kind of stonewall our opponents from getting those max banners because you can't mass assist them. They do big damage, and that further plays into our hand. Of getting more than max banners on offense and preventing our opponents from getting max banners on defense. Sorry about that. Phase 5. Phase 5 is Chewbacca. At this point, we should have 5 usable bounty hunters. It's important to know if your bounty hunters are kind of lacking, try to get up Dengar. I know I didn't put Dengar into this list because this list can only hold a certain number of players within, 10 tiers or 10 phases. So there's a limit to how many characters I can show on screen at once. But Dengar is super important for the Chewbacca event, and he's useful later, but mostly important for the Chewbacca event. So let's say you forget to farm Mando or Grief. You can passively work on Dengar over a certain amount of time so you can get your Chewbacca up and running. 3PO and Chewie goes with Chewbacca, goes with Han Solo, goes with CLS. Even at 2 stars, Gear 8, Gear 7, Gear 6, level 85, he's going to pay dividends just because of his stat sharing and his amazing kit. General Kenobi, kind of like Han Solo and Traya, these 3 characters right here. They're raid characters. You're going to get these depending, whenever your guild happens to get them. One thing I do want to note is Darth Traya's leadership Zeta. I always used to talk about in the past this compassion is weakness. Darth Traya's leadership Zeta is, I used to always just have this moniker. I would say, what's the most important Zeta in the game? It's the Zeta you have when you unlock Darth Traya. This is important because, a lot of players kind of rely too heavily on Geos, and Darth Traya obviously counters Geo. Well, maybe not obviously if you're super new to the game. The Geonosians attack out of turn a bunch. She does damage to enemies every time they attack at a turn. So they basically kill themselves. So you can underinvest in Traya, Darth Scion, Darth Nihilus, and then let's say your opponent really wanted Watt-ready Geos, or they have relics on their Geos and they've really overinvested. You go Gear 10, Gear 11, Gear 12 with the Triumvirate team, and you can undersize those Relic Geonosians and basically turn something that your opponent thought was a strength of their roster into a weakness and further exploit them. Excuse me. Now, Aura Singh is going to be kind of our mid to late game bounty hunter lead. Obviously, we talked about Bosk lead Zeta for getting max banners. Eventually, once our Mando and our Garif are up to, Gear 12, 7 stars, Mando has a Zeta. Maybe Zam is relics, and we apply that Omicron. Aura lead is going to be massively important. Excuse me. I just ate lunch, so I'm like coughing and burping. and I don't know, I just feel like I'm out of breath. Maybe I'm just fat. I think I might just be fat, guys. Now is a perfect time, if you're enjoying, to subscribe. We're trying to get 20,000 subscribers by the end of Massive PP May. If that's something you're interested, awesome. If not, no big deal. So Aura is going to be kind of our mid to late game bounty hunter lead that we're going to replace with Bosk eventually. Now, phase 6. These are all Darth Revan requirements. You'll notice we're going for Darth Revan first. We've always gone for Darth Revan first because it's mathematically smarter than going for Jedi Knight Revan. Most players go for Jedi Knight Revan first. Darth Revan's way better. Directly counters Jedi Knight Revan. If you don't really have a Darth Revan counter in the early and mid game, you can't beat them. So this kind of plays into our hand of our offensive teams get more than max banners, and our defensive teams are either unbeatable or strip a ton of banners. So it's going to be massively hard for our opponent to kind of deal with an early Darth Revan. Darth Sion and Darth Nihilus right here, like I talked about, to go with the Triumvirate. And then Sith Empire Trooper is kind of like a good tank to have on the Darth Revan team. He's not really all that important, so if you don't farm him for a long time, I wouldn't really mind. I wouldn't really fault you if that's something you want to do. And then Kylo Ren. Kylo Ren is the fourth of our First Order characters that we've added to the farming guide. If you're wondering what's new, that's what's new. And if you've noticed, the First Order characters that we've added are the First Order characters that are going to make up our fleet. We have Kylo Ren, we have Crew, we have these two guys, and we'll get to Hux a little bit later. Let's go back to squads and scroll back down. All right, awesome. Next is going to be some of the 3 remaining characters to unlock Jedi Knight Revan after we've gotten Darth Revan. Colonel Stark and Range Trooper, kind of just to shore up our Imperial Trooper team. Now, don't get confused with Shore Trooper, because we're shoring up our Imperial Trooper team, not Shore Trooper, but Colonel Stark and Range Trooper. These are also kind of characters you don't need to invest too much in. As you can see, even to this day, I've not invested that much into these guys. And just because of the fact that Piet, Moff Gideon, Veers, and Dark Trooper are so powerful, these characters kind of don't really need to be used all that often. If you're inclined to bring them up earlier than you need to, that's your prerogative. I wouldn't really mind it. I would just advise against it. All right, so Phase 7 is all about Jedi Knight Revan Unlock and Relic, and that leads into Darth Malak. So we have Jedi Knight Revan, Darth Revan. We get the characters that are required for Malak up to a certain amount of GP. We unlock Malak. He turns our Darth Revan team from a monster to an absolute monstrosity, nightmare, super Gok 3000, unkillable for most players in the early game and the mid game. Phase 8 is all about the Ewoks. Here are the 5 Ewoks. You want to make sure that Elder has some good gear, Chirp has a Zeta, and if you're going to overgear one of them, Wicket does all the damage. So for the C-3PO event, it's incredibly helpful to have a strong Wicket, with high crit chance, crit damage, and stuff like that. Phase 8, of course, we have our Ewoks, we got our C-3PO, and then we're going to add in Hux here. Hux is going to be the pilot for our mid-game First Order fleet. That's why we're not, rushing SLKR. We're not trying to get the full First Order team up and running. We're just trying to get the most important First Order characters for the fleet, just so that, when we hit Kyber, because we're going to hit Kyber a lot earlier than most players, because, we obviously have the most important, not most important, well, I guess it would be the most important, but also the best farming guide. We're going to be hitting Kyber earlier than most players, which means we need to have 6 fleets earlier than most players. I guess, while we're at it, we could probably throw in, our First Order officer right here, just because, he has a ship too. Phase 8 is all about the Shaak Ti and the 5-0 first clones. Shaak Ti is the last remaining character we need for P2 of gas, and the clones are what we need once we have gas to actually make him super useful. So obviously this Phase 8 kind of works perfectly with Phase 9, which is Asajj and the rest of the droids that we don't have yet to unlock our gas. Now we have gas, we get General Grievous to go along with the Separatists that we just, upgraded. Wat Tambor from, eventually we've done enough Dark Side Geonosis and TBs that we have a Wat Tambor that's usable. Now Phase 10. Phase 10 is our first Galactic Legend, Jedi Master Kenobi. He's by far the best Galactic Legend. Should probably be your first. Relic 8 is much easier than it used to be much easier now than it used to be, and if you're following this guide, by the time you get to this point, even if you're like right here and you're close, by the time you get to this point, Relic 8 will be even easier to get. So, the 2 Relic 8 requirements for, Kenobi and Yoda aren't going to be too much of a problem. And then the rest of Phase 10 is just the requirements for Kenobi. Thank you guys so much for watching. Of course, if you guys want to join the Discord, and be a part of the next test group where we try to see what your win percentage is following the APGAINS Proof Farming Guide. Let me know. As always, I love you, and I'll see you later.